Okay, it's another Sanyo beta machine from Japan. This one's a model VTC-MH5, and superficially it looks roughly the same as the VTC-M50, which was sold in Europe. So I'm guessing that this is essentially the Japanese market version of the VTC-M50. Aside from obviously it being an NTSC machine, this one seems to have a built-in FM stereo tuner, so it can internally record FM stereo simulcast recordings, which I don't think the European version had. If we spin it round and have a look at the back, we can see, as well as the usual AV inputs and outputs and the TV aerial connections, we have terminals for an FM radio aerial as well. So that's quite a nice feature. We'll have a little play with that once we get it going, but as you can see, it's a bit dirty. I'm not really going to bother to clean it until I've had a little go at it and make sure it's going to be a worker, because there's no point spending ages polishing the thing if it's just going to be a piece of junk. But I think it'll clean up quite nicely, although most of the buttons feel fine. The fast forward button seems a bit creaky, and also this flap, I think the hinge on the right hand side is a little bit broken here, so you have to be a bit careful how you open and close that flap. Apart from that, I think it's pretty good. One thing I did notice is if I flip the machine over, for some reason all the screws have been removed from the bottom panel, which isn't a problem in itself because I can obviously just replace the screws, but you do wonder why someone took those screws out. And it's clearly had additional feet stuck on in the four corners here, which have subsequently been removed. But more worryingly than all of that really is that the bottom plate here is quite badly caved in, and that metal makes contact with the underneath of the circuit board in there. So if that's happened while this machine is powered up, then I'm thinking it's probably going to be game over, because that will have earthed out all sorts of things on that circuit board under there. So fingers crossed, I'm really hoping that isn't the case. But anyway, I think the first thing I'll do is power the thing up and see if we get any clock display, any lights on the front. So I'll get my Variac set up and we'll give that a try. I have got this thing, of course, which is designed to take 200 to 240 volts input and give 100 to 120 output. My mains supply voltage in this house here is 240 something volts, and this thing with that input voltage gives out over 120 volts. And I just think that's a little bit too much for a device that's meant to be run on 100 volts. That's sort of more than 20% over voltage. I think that's too much. So I'm going to use a Variac and give it fairly close to 100 volts. Okay, so we've got the Variac putting out just fractionally over 100 volts, 100.3 volts. Dim the lighting, just make it a bit easier to see the display when we power it up. And we shall power on. Absolutely nothing. I forgot to plug it in. Right. Let's try that again with it plugged in. Yes. And we've got some indication on the VU meters as well. That's probably noise from the tuner, I'm guessing. Interesting that light doesn't go out when we put it into standby. It's a bit bizarre. Shall we see if we can set the clock? Open that a bit carefully. Now I'm guessing it probably needs to be on to set the clock. Clock set. Tell you what, I'm going to hook this up to my powered speakers and see what that noise is. So I've now got my amplified speakers connected to the headphone output. Let's turn the power on and see what we hear. Yeah, as expected, it's just white noise. Oh. That seems to work. That's FM radio noise. Hi-Fi is still lit up, even though I've theoretically now turned the power off. Oh well. Should we take the top off and see what the mechanism looks like? Why not? Okay, I've removed the 4 screws, 2 from each side, so this is genuinely the first time I've lifted the lid off this machine. And there it is. So you can have a little look at the actual mechanism. I have powered it off, by the way. Oh, there's another screw. Another 2 screws actually. Still doesn't want to hinge up, does it? Why doesn't it want to hinge up? That looks to me as though that's meant to be there, like that, so we may as well... Actually, I'll put that back later because I wouldn't have been able to get that screw if that was in the way. So why is that resisting me hinging it? Let's have a look round the back. I don't want to force it. That doesn't want to hinge though. Aha! Is that coming? Yes, there we go. It needs sort of lifting up at the back. And it doesn't latch in position like the other models. So I have to rig up a way of propping that out of the way. Let's use a pen. Where can we prop it? That heat sink. There we are. So far it's looking pretty much identical to the other similar models. It's the lacing belt. I'm just going to try manually turning that with my finger to see if it moves freely. It feels a bit sort of stiff, but it is actually turning. The belt looks quite slack as well. Yeah, probably going to need a new belt there, but that's hardly surprising really. Take this plate off and have a look at the idlers. It's going to be easier if we pop the front panel off. Well, that's tight. Right. There we are. So this idler assembly here all looks very familiar from the other models, but I can see that that top idler is just completely disintegrated. That's no use at all. Can't quite see the bottom idler, but it feels quite crusty, so I think that one's gone as well. And the belt in there is obviously completely gone as well, so we're going to need another belt kit for this machine. Okay, I've just temporarily reassembled the machine, mainly so I don't lose any of the screws while I wait for the belt kit to be delivered. But unfortunately this front flap, because it's a little bit broken, it was making it extremely difficult to get the front panel back in position. There's a little plastic peg in there which engages the little hole in the side of this flap, and there should be one at this side as well, but it's actually broken off. So the reason it was difficult to get the front back on was because this kept falling out of position as I was trying to put the front cover back on, front panel back on. Obviously if I get the machine working I will try and refit this, try and repair that little peg, but for the time being I've just had to leave that flap off, unfortunately. Okay, I've now replaced the lacing motor belt down here, the rear drive belt and the rear idler tyres. The only belt I haven't replaced is the loading belt down here, because that's quite fiddly to replace. It has started to go, so if the deck works I probably will replace that one as well, but for the time being I've only done the ones that are sort of necessary. I've got it hooked up to the variac. The variac is giving out 100.5 volts, which is fine, so let's power up. The clock's lit up, so let's turn on. That looks promising. That's happened because I've been where I've been loading the installing the belt, I should say. I've obviously moved the loading ring slightly there. So let's try putting a tape in. Before I put an actual tape in, I'll put my empty shell tape in and make sure it loads nicely. No, so that belt's going to need replacing, but that's not a problem. I can deal with that. Let's try fast forward. Sounds okay. Rewind. Seems okay. Right, let's go for play. Well, that's nice and quick. And it appears to be running. Stop. That's very quick, isn't it? Play again. Stop. Right, let's try eject. This may not work very well because of that belt, but we'll try it. Oh, it did manage to eject the cassette. Now, let's try a real tape. Yep. Now this tape's right near the end, so I'm going to try rewind first. Yep, that's running. Tape's not quite down though, but I'm sure that's just because that belt is loose. Try fast forward. Yep. Let's try play. Yeah, we've got the usual screech, which typically just means the tape path needs cleaning. So we can deal with that. Now, does it take the tape back into the cassette when we press stop? Yes, it does. And can it eject the cassette? Yes. Right, so I think the next thing I need to do, unfortunately, is change that loading belt down there, because that's slipping a bit and it's stopping the cassette going fully down as it goes in. So that's the next job. Okay, I've failed on that because the belt is right down in there, and that's very difficult to get at because there's a piece of this cradle mechanism which sticks out this way and prevents you getting the belt out and the new belt in. On the other machines with this deck, I was able to pass a long screwdriver right through from this side to undo a screw on this bracket, which allowed me to move the motor away slightly and get enough clearance to get the belt in and out. But in this model there's circuit boards, and in fact the heatsink on the power supply is right in the way, so I can't do that trick. So the only option I think would be to get the whole cassette cradle mechanism out. Before I attempt to do that, I'm going to see if the machine actually works. So I've got it hooked up to a TV here. Ignore this Blu-ray player, that's just raising the TV screen up a little bit, that's not connected to anything. So I've just got the AV outs going straight into the TV, and variac is on. That's giving 100.3 volts at the moment, which is fine. So let's power up, and as I put the tape in I'll have to give it a bit of a hand to go down because of this belt, but we should be able to get the tape in. There we go. Yeah, that's gone down fine. So I've queued this tape up in another machine to just before a bit of NTSC material, so let's hit play and see what happens. Oh, and also I forgot to say, I've given the tape path a clean as well. Haven't cleaned the heads themselves because I don't really want to clean the heads and put unnecessary wear on them if they don't need cleaning. So I've cleaned all the tape guides and the sort of static bits of the drum, but I haven't been anywhere near the video heads themselves. So let's see what we get. Ooh, helps if you turn it on, doesn't it? So hopefully this tape should be queued up just before an NTSC recording. Yes, there we go. Oh, we've got the aspect ratio wrong on the TV, haven't we? We can fix that though. Four to 3, there we go. Yep, that's working fine, but this tape doesn't have hi-fi audio. It is playing the linear audio, but that's a bit soft, I would say. Yeah, that's the interference you can see on there is the tape. I don't think that's the machine. I think this tape's a bit dodgy. But that looks to me like it's working, so let's check if the tracking control works. So that's to one extreme. Yep, we're getting a little bit of noise at the bottom there. Back to the centre detent. The other way. Yeah, and we get a more, and the TV's lost sync, so yeah, so the tracking control is working. Let's try pause. Yeah, that's working. Should we try, we unpause. Picture search forwards. Picture rewind. We run off the end of the recording there. Yeah, that's working, but I'd have thought the noise bars should have been more stable than that, but what have we got going on now? Have we got a problem now? It seems to have lost its tracking, doesn't it? Oh, it just wants the tracking round to the anti-clockwise position slightly. It's strange that it didn't need that before I tried the picture search though. Let's try stop and play again. And put the tracking back to the centre position. Yeah, it seems to need the tracking rotated anti-clockwise slightly. Not quite sure why. Anyway, that's basically working, isn't it? So it does give me the tape back, but it just can't fully load it because of that belt. Well, I'm pretty sure it's because of that belt. That belt has gone a bit sticky. So yeah, I think we're pretty much there. So I'll leave this video at this point, I think, and I'll make a part 2 of this, where once I've tried to replace this belt, and also had a go at trying to get this front flap back on, because the mechanism that operates this flap is quite intricate, and it seems to be, okay, I know there is a peg broken from this side, but even sort of allowing for that, I was struggling to work out how you actually get this back on, and I can't find any service information for this model, or the VTC-M5, which I think uses the same type of flap. So I think that's going to be quite a challenge, but it's basically working, isn't it? So I'm going to leave this video at that point. Actually, before I go, I've just noticed that the power supply is getting extremely hot. That heatsink is almost too hot to touch. And that little heatsink is getting hot as well. That's much hotter than it should be, I think. It shouldn't be that hot. I don't think that's quite right there. And it's also suspicious this doesn't seem to go completely off. I mean, the VU meters go out, but the tuner is still on, and we've still got the beta hi-fi indicator. Doesn't seem to be fully going off when I go to standby. Not sure everything's entirely well with this machine. But anyway, leave that for a future video. Thank you for watching.